to the second of the town halls that we are conducting relative to the walkability project that the city is asking in the November election on the ballot for you to make a decision and provide your advice regarding the installation of what are euphemistically referred to as recreational trails. They may be more familiar to you as a sidewalk, but for a variety of good legal purposes that protect you, they are referred to as recreational trails. When you hear that phrase, think sidewalk, because that's essentially what they are. They're 5 foot wide, they're made out of concrete, they're in sections, they're like every sidewalk you've seen. What's different here is that we're placing them in the context of the city of Pepper Pike. So, we had the first of these sessions on Saturday, and today is going to follow the same format, same presentation. So if you're here on Saturday, you're not going to see anything new. Don Shee, who's sitting to my left, our city engineer, is going to make a short presentation, give you put a little more flesh on it so far as what would these things conceptually look like. Nothing has been engineered at this point, but this is to give you a better flavor of what these are. I am joined here this evening to my right by members of your city council, Emmy Zatrock, Jim LeMay, Tony Gentili, and Mano Daga. And Scott Newell working the camera. At the end of this presentation, when we have a question period, a comment period, we ask that you use that microphone set up on the stand to address your question or comment. This is primarily an informational session for you to make sure that you understand what this project is about, where it's going, things like that. Of course, your comments are always welcome. However, this is primarily an informational session, just so you know. And ask that whatever you are addressing at the microphone, that it not exceed 2 minutes. We're going to try to stay as tight to that as we can. There are a lot of people in this room. The meeting went pretty long on Saturday, went 2 hours. So buckle up. Yes. The topic, Mr. LeMay reminds me, that the topic for this evening is walkability. Although this is a town hall format, it is not to discuss every other compliment or grievance you might have regarding the city. We appreciate it all. We like to hear about it, talk about it, but that's not the purpose of tonight. Tonight is the walkability project, okay? There's already one walkability project that has been already engaged in by the city coming up. As you may have read in your emails or read in the newspaper, the city is proceeding with the design and installation of a trail, which is a different project altogether. It's in the creation of a linear park that would encompass the Gates Mills Boulevard median. That trail is 10 feet wide. That's a different animal than what we're talking about here. We're talking about a 5 foot sidewalk recreational trail here. It would extend on South Woodland, Lander, and Shaker Boulevard for now. To anticipate some questions that we had on Saturday, that is not to discount the future and where it might go on other major streets. There is absolutely zero initiative or conversation or discussion that these would ever go on our quiet side streets. There are a couple other major streets where this could occur also in the future. But for now, you have to start somewhere with any project. And we're looking to start with Lander Road, Shaker Boulevard, and South Woodland. So with that, right. If you didn't pick one up, this handout that's on the table, that is what you're going to receive in the mail via the United States Postal Service if and when the United States Postal Service actually delivers it to your home. So if you want to grab one up here, feel free to grab it. It's also available on your city website, pepperpike.org. It's posted, I think, 2 times at 2 different linkages on the front page of the website. It came to you in your emails already, so this should not hopefully be new news to you, what you're going to be picking up here, but it's always good to have. Is once enough? Is 3 too many? Here it is for you again. And I am at this point going to turn it over to your city engineer, Don Shee, who is going to take you through some of this project.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for coming tonight. We're going to go through about a 20 slide show. This isn't going to take too long, but just want to introduce people to the concept of these pedestrian trails or paths. This first slide is just really a map of the city of Pepper Pike, and north is at the top. Most of you can recognize sort of the shape of the city. It is bisected by Lander Road, running north and south, kind of through the middle of the map. Lander Road we'd be looking at potentially putting in a pedestrian path from Lander Road at Chagrin and running it north all the way up to Cedar Road.
This is on the last page of your handout. You can't see it on the screen.
Yeah, there's a copy up close if you want to look at the last page of the handout. That'll help you out. We also show an east-west path on Shaker Boulevard that starts at the circle at Brainerd and Shaker and runs to Pepper Creek Drive. The third road, I was mentioning Shaker Boulevard runs east-west, sort of in the middle of the city, and it starts at the circle at Brainerd, and it would run to Pepper Creek Drive. And then I also have South Woodland Road that would start at New Brainerd and run all the way to just short of Pine Tree Road. So those are the 3 that are actually on the ballot for November. The next map shows a service area for people that could, from the side streets, get to the main paths, or from the main streets get to the side streets using this network. And that encompasses a fairly significant portion of Pepper Pike by installing these first 3 sections of path. The next group of slides are going to be exhibits that we prepared just to show what a potential sidewalk might look like or a pedestrian path on Lander Road. Here's a slide that shows an existing section where we actually have a fair amount of trees and some things that are a bit in the way. We would look at putting the walk about 7 to 10 feet from the curb, and it is a 5-foot walk. There's an area there where we may have to trim some branches or do some selective tree removal on a case-by-case basis. We have not decided on the side of the street that we'll place it on. This one currently is being shown on the east side of the street, but we would go through a process to determine the best location based on utilities, underground utilities, utility poles, fire hydrants, number of driveways we have to cross. All those things get factored into a decision-making process, even the location of future utilities potentially. So, here's another spot on Lander. It's by the Brookwood-Northwood intersection there, Lander and Brookwood. We were able to actually find a sidewalk that looked very similar to where it would potentially go, and we superimposed that on there just to give you an idea of what that would look like, adding some crosswalk lines and stop bar to be better placed on the pavement, and also there are curb ramps there for ADA accessibility to get somebody that's in a wheelchair or mobility challenge to get them down to the pavement. This is another slide just to show sort of a wide open area on Lander, which there actually are quite a few that are pretty open. Again, it's got about a 7 to 10 foot tree lawn area. The walkway would be about 5 feet wide, and there's another 13 to 16 feet or so of space between the outside edge of the walk and what is the right-of-way. We've had some discussion in the past about what right-of-way is. The right-of-way is a pretty significant area that's on the corridor that's actually owned by the city. It's where most of the utilities are. It includes the pavement. It includes gas lines, water lines, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, fiber optic, anything that's buried underground, and then obviously the poles, and also everybody's connections to utilities. Your water line might be on the other side of the street, but your connection goes through the right-of-way to connect into that water line or the sewer on the opposite side sometimes.
Don, why don't you explain the concept of a right-of-way?
Sure. The concept of a right-of-way is it's a corridor that's actually owned by the city, and the centerpiece is typically where everybody drives and people think of as the street. But there's this pretty significant area on either side of the street. On Lander Road, for instance, the right-of-way is 86 feet wide, and the pavement's only about 28 feet, so that there's a pretty big grass area on both sides of the street that is actually public right-of-way. In that corridor, that is where, when Lander Road got built in the late 1920s, that is where the storm line occurs. That is where the water main gets put in. All of those utilities got placed in that public right-of-way. And that green space, it's still a sort of a functional utility chase for a lot of things that go on in the right-of-way. Even the utility poles, they are there with permission to be located within the right-of-way. It's our service corridor for not only traffic, but for all the utilities that service the residents on both sides of the street and connect to other locations throughout the town. We did a preliminary cost estimate for building the different sections of pedestrian trail, and the entire run really from the north end of the Chagrin Circle to Cedar is $1,460,000, and those are in 2023 dollars. We put together similar exhibits for South Woodland Road. Here's an example. The right-of-way of South Woodland Road, it was originally planned for it to be a very significant boulevard. It's 100 feet wide. The pavement's about 30 feet wide. We just resurfaced a portion of it. And the right-of-way is, like I said, 100 feet wide. So there's 35 feet on each side of the pavement that's public right-of-way. We still intend to keep the walkway about 7 to 10 feet away from the curb and find a spot to place it that there's good space. This first slide actually shows there's quite a bit of space on some pretty significant long runs of the roadway there.
That's showing a pretty straight path.
Yes.
What are we anticipating?
Right. We've looked at, in some locations, I think a lot of people are familiar with the walkway that went in orange. In some areas, there's some pretty significant meandering to work their way around, a mailbox or a telephone pole. And it's maybe a little bit more severe visually than we're looking for. We would do very, very modest meanders, so maybe over a very long stretch, try to get out of the way of, say, a fire hydrant or a utility pole or some other feature that we needed to work around. Generally, they'll be pretty parallel to the street. So the goal isn't to have them just be wavy for the sake of being wavy, but gradually work our way around small obstacles if that's the best way to do it. We will also potentially move some of those things. There's some cost effectiveness for that as well. Here's another view where potentially there could be some tree trimming, but generally there's plenty of space to put a walk in here. This is another one where we show some existing conflicts up ahead. Somebody has kind of a stone area in their front lawn and some other railroad ties and things. And on a case-by-case basis, we try to pick the best route through that. Sometimes there are things in the right-of-way that really are not supposed to be there. They're really not safe. Every once in a while, you'll see somebody with some really large rocks placed a few feet off the pavement. It's actually a very significant roadside hazard, because if somebody does go off the road and hits the rock or the big tree that's right up against the road, it could be a problem. So we would evaluate this on a case-by-case basis, trying to find the best route for the walk with minimal disturbance. Thank you. We put together a similar cost estimate for South Woodland from New Brainerd to Lander, and then from Lander all the way to Pine Tree, and it's about 1.35 million. We're not really recommending extending the sidewalk all the way out to Som Center Road on South Woodland. It really doesn't pick up a lot of houses, and when you get to Som Center Road, there's really no other path or connection over there. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to run it all the way out at this time. Similar process on Shaker. On Shaker Boulevard, the right-of-way is a little tighter. Its total width is about 60 feet, so there's not quite as much space on either side as there is on Lander or South Woodland, but there's still enough room to put in a 5 to 7 foot sort of tree lawn, and have the walkway, and then still have some cushion on the outside. Here we show it not far from City Hall, where there's a bridge over the branch of Pepper Creek. It runs up along near the edge of the bridge rail, and it works out pretty well. Here's another spot that's a little bit more congested. Is somebody that has kind of the stone look for their tree lawn area. We have an existing fire hydrant that we might need to move. There are some branches that might be overhanging and may need to be either trimmed or cut back a bit. There are some existing street signs and things like that that we would also move as part of the project. The sidewalk or the walkway would go behind the mailboxes in either case. In general, we would have to evaluate the condition of the driveway. The sidewalk may go through the driveway, or they may stop on one end and pick it up on the other end. It's really kind of based on the condition of the driveway and whether or not they can do that cleanly. So when it's done, it needs to be something that can be smooth and something that can be traversed by not only a healthy, mobile person, but somebody who's maybe mobility challenged. You may need some type of assistance, either they might be a wheelchair or using a cane or a walker, or just not be able to get over a complicated surface. So in general, we will likely replace a section going through driveways. There might be some driveways that are very nice and in good shape that we don't have to do anything. Here's one a little bit complicated near the intersection of Alvord Drive. We show what we would need to do in terms of adding a crosswalk and a stop bar. We'll have to relocate some minor signs, but generally speaking, really not a big problem, and a pretty safe sight distance for a car coming up from Alvord to pull out into Shaker, and a good sight distance for people that may be walking on the road and being able to see cars coming. This is just another view on Shaker, just to show some additional areas where there are some pretty big trees pretty close to the roadway. Generally speaking, we're really not looking at too much impact to most of these trees. There could be some branches, again, that need to be trimmed, but generally speaking, I think we're in pretty good shape on this one. Here's another. This is where the walkway would end. This is potentially across the street from Pepper Creek Drive, which kind of dead ends into Shaker Boulevard, and it's just an example of what a curb ramp would look like at the crossing for people that might be walking down on the street on Pepper Creek that want to cross the roadway and then get on the sidewalk to walk along Shaker. For Shaker Boulevard, we have the cost from the Brainerd Gatesville Circle to Pepper Creek Drive is about $930,000. Again, we are not recommending extending the sidewalk all the way to Som Center. On the north side of Shaker, and that particular piece is the Pepper Pike Club, which is no pedestrian traffic really there, and there's really just a handful of houses on Shaker east of Pepper Creek Drive. That's the slideshow. Any questions?
Thank you, Don. That's basically the project. Conceptually, I want to emphasize what Don has just shown is conceptual. There's been no engineering done. He has not completed his studies regarding which side of the street these go on, but we did not want to leave you without that conceptual image at a minimum of what these things would be and how they would appear. So with that, I think we can open up the floor to any questions you might have regarding this. I'd ask again that you step up to the microphone, let us know your name, the street that you live on, and again, we're going to enforce our 2-minute rule, so we appreciate your keeping that in mind. It makes it much less uncomfortable if we have to cut someone off. We don't want to have to do that and go there.
Hi.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. If there are, I see some people who visited with us on Saturday. Rather than reiterate and say what you said before, we'd appreciate if you didn't. The council here has, took in and heard your comments, and we appreciate your coming back this evening. So thank you. And ma'am, you're going to have to get on the mic. These mics are fairly directional. You have to be on the mic pretty close to be heard.
Behind it or in front?
Right there.
Right there? Thanks.
Yeah, like that.
Thank
There you go.
Hi, I'm Sharon Branham. I live on South Woodland. I've been here for 51 years. I explained to the gentleman earlier, I have never once received a mail, anything about any of this. I saw it on my computer. We've been out of town, so I didn't make the other meeting. I live on South Woodland, 5 houses west of Lander. I have parking directly in front of my house by the street. It's going to be gone if you take that land. That's number one. I will no longer have parking where I'm supposed to have it. A few years back, when Mayor Akers was here, we had the same discussion. It was totally voted down. It was basically, if you want sidewalks, stay where you were. This is a bedroom community. It's quiet. It's peaceful. There's no sidewalks. Nobody, and every day, every police blotter you read in the Sun Press, they're running up the sidewalks. Your cars aren't locked. They're stealing your cars. There's a lot going on. This is not a neighborhood for children. It never has been. There is, wait a minute. I had 2 that were raised, went all the
Please,
way.
ma'am, just continue. Please,
There were no-
let's be respectful to anyone at the
Okay.
microphone.
They went all the way through the school system. None of the homes here are walkable from one to the next. I have 2 acres of land. I may do with taking my kids to where they had to go. Same thing with Halloween. There isn't any trick or treat on South Woodland. None of the big homes because the kids don't go. 2 acres. Okay. I like the quiet out here. That's why I moved here. I just looked at the map where these people are going to put, or you're going to put your beginning paths. There's no place to go when you get to the end. You got to turn around and go right back. It doesn't connect to anything from South Woodlands or Lander. There are no walkabilities at the end of those roads. Where are they going? So you have your little piece. You're still going to walk along, if it's your kids, holding on their hand on South Woodland, because traffic is running up and down. When I moved here, you could lay in the middle of the street and nobody went by you. Now, Lander in South Woodland is, I would love to have had a street light there. Never. There have been horrible accidents there. The traffic, because of the year, the mobility, the people that are in here in the outlying areas, it's very crowded. These streets are constant traffic accidents. So it hasn't changed, it's gotten worse. And you're gonna put people walking with kids, and you're gonna hold on to your kid to keep them running 5 foot from the street. It makes no sense to me. You're not going from point A to point B. You're going from point A to turn around and go right back again.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Scott Meyerson, and I live on Pepper Creek Drive. So I'm glad to see that the sidewalks are planning to go there. I'm very supportive of this. I love the city. I haven't lived here that long, and I'm very passionate about mobility exercise and the ability to get around in a city. And I think having the opportunity for people to get out and walk is great for people's health, and I'm glad to see it happen. I'd like to take it a step further and say, especially, I'm very encouraged by your presentation with the sides of the easeways, how large they are, that it be considered in the future in planning that it not omit the possibility of extended bike lanes. In cities where there are extended bike lanes, you can get to areas of the town and not need to take your car, and I would be someone who would love to do that on a regular basis, and I think other people would, but Shaker Boulevard, as one example, Lander as another, going towards the Heinens, you really can't do that well, and I just brought a son up through this school right here, and they basically tell the kids, don't take a bike to school. And that, to me, when I moved to town, was something I thought very sad about, that they can't take a bike to school. So I feel when you're planning this, a 5-foot bike path, maybe what we can afford, 5-foot walking path, excuse me, might be what you can afford now, and I get that. But please consider the opportunities to extend that, because now you would be able to take Shaker and get a bike path to go all the way down to Som Center, which takes you down where everybody loves to bike down in the valley. It will also connect to Shaker Bike Path, which could take you all the way to downtown. On Lander, it will take me from Pepper Creek Drive all the way to Heinens and allow me to get all the way up to where Trader Joe's is and 271. And if there are bike paths like that around, more people will use them. And if there's walk paths, I think people will use them as well. So I'm encouraged by what you're doing, but would like it to be considered that we don't do a project and now we can't do the bike path because it's not available to us.
Okay.
And take that into account.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Excellent example up here. I remind everyone, please silence your phones.
That was their 2-minute timer, Mayor. That's what we.
Hi, Marie Saul from Shaker Boulevard.
You gotta get closer.
How does this thing work? I got it. Okay. We touched on it a little bit on the meeting on Saturday about whether or not the city is going to.
You can take it off.
You can take it off.
Is that better? Okay. We talked a little bit about plowing the sidewalks, and if you could go over that again, because I wasn't quite sure how that's going to work. Is the city planning on plowing the sidewalks? I grew up in Shaker Heights, and they kept those sidewalks clean all winter long. So A, are they going to do that? B, what will be the cost to the city, equipment-wise, manpower-wise? The service department is inundated all winter long with keeping our streets clean, so now you're adding cleaning sidewalks on top of that. Then I want to know, where do you put this snow when you clean it? It has to go off to the sides or pile up, and like it is, like in my driveway, we have to put it at the end of our drive, all of us do. We can't plow across the street, which is understandable. So I'd like to know how that is going to work and how it's going to impact the city money-wise for the manpower and the equipment. And are they going to be able to keep up with it all winter long? Because I know the service department does a fabulous job trying to keep up the streets. We've had some pretty bad winters, and those guys work very hard to do that.
Thank you. I'll reiterate what you heard on Saturday. There is not any plan right now that's been considered where we would plow these sidewalks during the wintertime. There is no obligation for any homeowner to clear the sidewalks. There will obviously be some time during the wintertime when the sidewalk is obscured by snow. Right now, there's no sidewalk at all, so it won't be different in that sense from what you experience now with your walkability. But because of some of the things that Marie described, there is not a current plan to be clearing these walks until we have a walk and we see their function and what people demand. We'll see what the future holds, I suppose. I'm not trying to pretend that we'll never ever in the history of man or woman not as a community, decide we should clear these sidewalks. Right now, there is no cost involved, there is no plan. One thing I can say is that whatever we do with these pathways, they're only going to occur in time, over time, as they are affordable by the city. We will not engage in a project or any consequence of these that are not affordable by the city. That has been the guidestone of the 12 years that I've been in office, that the members of this council who have ridden that road with me, of the new members, everyone is very fiscally conscious, and we simply will not engage in a process that the city can't afford.
This is Sarah Hannibal from Fox Hollow Drive, and I was wondering if the sidewalks would continue to the high school and the library for accessibility for kids to get to school.
Thank you, Sarah. Right now, as Don would explain, the Lander Road sidewalk is likely the first pathway that would be installed, followed by Shaker. Again, as I said in my opening comments, it is not to suggest other pathways won't occur in the future. The one you mentioned, I know you came to planning commission meetings for a few times over the years and have urged the very walkway that you're describing.
I do think that would be more usable and get more use than Shaker or South Woodland in the beginning. Just my 2 cents.
Hi, my name is Susan Hennenberg. I have lived in my house on Shaker Boulevard for 44 years. I have been a realtor at the Howard Hanna Pepper Pike office for 21 years. I'm going to tell you all very clearly that sidewalks will increase the value of your house. Absolutely, positively. I have people, including my daughter and my son-in-law, who just a few weeks ago moved from Beechwood to Orange because Orange has sidewalks. We don't have any. And my son-in-law said, my kids need sidewalks. I wanted sidewalks 40 years ago. I stayed here, but it was not great for my children. I now have grandchildren, and I would love for them to have these sidewalks so that they can ride their scooters, ride their little tricycles. We could walk. My husband asked me the other day, oh, will I walk with him because he now needs to walk for his health? I said, I'm not walking on the street and I'm not walking in muddy grass, but I would walk on sidewalks. One of my closest friends is Kathy Mulcahy, who's the mayor of Orange. She has told me, and they just recently put in a lot of sidewalks there, in Orangewood and on Lander, as you could see, that people love the sidewalks. Some of them, were complaining about it also at the beginning, but now everybody loves those sidewalks. Honestly, if you want your house to hold its value in Pepper Pike, you should consider voting for this, because sidewalks are really wonderful for many, many reasons.
Thank you, Susan.
I'm Sheldon Gisser. I live on Kursdale. I've been living there for about 25 years. My wife and I do a lot of walking, mostly in the immediate neighborhood because it's low traffic. We really would like to walk over to Heinz occasionally, but walking down that short part of Lander is really an experience. I think that sidewalks or walkways, whatever, are definitely needed, particularly on the streets you're talking about. I would suggest, however, and particularly in light of the fact that you have these very wide rights-of-way on Lander and on South Woodland, that you give some further consideration to having them serpentine as in Orange. I think people I know who live in Orange really like the fact that you don't have just plain straight sidewalk, but have an interesting walk, and a lovely walk. Whether we do that or not is beyond me, but I'm just pleased that we're giving some consideration, and I hope we do have those sidewalks or walkways, or preferably, but serpentine. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Heidi Arnold, and I live on Landerwood. Towards, I'm sorry. Out, in. Okay.
The other way.
All right. I've never heard that before. My name's Heidi Arnold, and I live on Landerwood. My question is just specifically about deciding which side of the street, and I understand we need to see what's under the street to figure those things out. It's my understanding that when working on Shaker Boulevard, that was kind of some of the issues, was what was under the ground in terms of figuring out what was happening. So I could be wrong on that. But when will we be able to understand which side would we be considering? I mean, that's just one of the reasons, voting-wise, that I would care about, because I would think that if you wanted to, it would continue on Shaker and then just stay on the west side of Lander, and that way when it went to the other side of the circle, it would be the same side of the street that Orange has their sidewalks. Has that been considered, or is that I mean, I guess my question is, when would we be able to get the information as to which side of the street?
Thanks. Really, we do have to put all of the information together, and that's part of the process. So we really haven't gone through that level of detail because we just don't know whether or not we're going to do anything. So if we get to the point where we decide, yes, we want a walkway, then we'll have to take a look at it. We also really do look hard at long stretches where you don't have interference with driveways. And that also is one of the factors. So landscaping, driveways, utilities, future utilities, and trying to balance all of those things and try to make a logical decision. That's why it's tough for me to say today, like, it's definitely going on one side or the other.
Right.
There's just too many variables to get into right now.
I just noticed that everything's on the east side of Lander, so I understand in terms of utilities wise. Thank you.
Right, sure, thanks.
Hi, I'm Nan Gisser. I want to add to what my husband said. We live on Kerrsdale. We walk a lot. The nature of our block has changed quite a bit in the last few years. We have young families. We have young families and a lot of young preschoolers and young school-age children. I'm sure that the sidewalks would be a great thing for them. It's dangerous driving down South Woodland. Sometime there'll be somebody walking in the street, jogging in the street, and it's hard. And if it's dark or getting dark, sometimes you see them at the last minute, and I think sidewalks would be terrific.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Skufka, and I live at the Little White House on the northeast corner of Shaker and Lander. I've been to several of the council meetings. I have a few comments to make, and then I have a few questions to ask. Number one, in response to the realtor, I do not ever see the property values of Pepper Pike decreasing because we have no sidewalks for two reasons. Number one, most of the properties are at least 1 acre in size. Number two, the Orange School District is one of the top school districts in the state of Ohio. So people will come in here and buy here regardless of if we have sidewalks or not. Second comment, I think that our property taxes will probably increase if and when sidewalks are ever put in because of the annual cost of maintaining not just the sidewalks, paying the staff, the equipment, and so on. So you think about that when you're making that vote. Next comment. This is on the ballot for November, but let me tell you, if you don't understand this, my community cohorts is that whatever we decide, the council can decide whatever they want. This is an advisory vote. So you better make sure that you make that vote based on what you think is going to be right for you. But they still reserve the right, which according to the Ohio Revised Code, they can change any vote that we want. That to me is not democracy. So that's a problem that has to be addressed at some point. My next comment is that affordability. The city has said, the mayor has said that they only do projects that they can afford. Well, it's my understanding, and you can correct me if I am wrong, that there is a $15 million surplus in the city funds. And yet, I live on Shaker Boulevard. People on Shaker Boulevard have to pay for that sewer project. That is not right. If there is $15 million in surplus, why do I have to pay for a sewer project that I didn't have a voice in, that I can't afford? I have to keep working. I'm tired, I'm sick, I want to retire, but I have to keep working to be able to pay for that project. And they have $15 million of our tax money in the coffers. And correct me if I am wrong about that. But
Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap
I'm not
up.
done.
Just wrap up, please.
I will wrap it up. That sewer project is going to be extended, so it's not just on Shaker Boulevard now. Some of you will know in the future that it's coming to other places. So that's something. Question. Whose idea was it to put the sidewalks in initially when this project all came up? Whose idea was it?
It was my idea.
It was your idea?
Ma'am, we'll answer your question, but you're well over 2 minutes, and we're going to...
Okay.
Well, no, it's not okay, ma'am.
No, it
We're
is
trying to be
okay.
respectful to
I am
everyone in
too.
this room.
I am too.
And I'm going to have to
But
ask you
need
now to
let us have
relinquish
our
the
voice,
mic.
Okay? And actually, that was my last question.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
That's quite
The
a show.
sidewalk project has been an evolving conversation for many years, beginning in the Planning Commission, in discussions in council. This is not a new conversation. So thank you, sir.
My name is Elton Reamer. I live on South Woodland Road in Pepper Pike. I've been here for 47 years. It's been wonderful. My name is Elton Reamer. I live on South Woodland Road, 28099 South Woodland Road. I've been here with my lovely wife and children for 47 years. We're fortunate enough that our grandchild and great-grandchildren just bought a house 2 doors away. Our son lives across the street on South Woodland. Their issue have been sidewalks. It has been an issue that I've been wanting to talk about, and I did with Mayor Akers some 40 years ago. And the same people would say to me, when I want to take my kids somewhere, I put them in the back of my car and I take them. Well, I'm a walker, I'm a runner, I'm a biker. I have had people aim at me in the bike lanes on South Woodland. It's dangerous. We live about a half mile from the beautiful new park, and I see women with strollers with 2 children pushing that stroller down South Woodland. It bothers me. It's not safe. We need young people. We must have young people. The realtor is right. I'm a CPA. I'm not a realtor, but I can tell you, Pepper Pike has low real estate taxes. We have very low income taxes, and we deserve to have the best for our residents. We can afford to do that. We can't afford not to do that because young people will stop coming here. There are wonderful communities around us, and I believe we need sidewalks or walkways or whatever they're called. We live on South Woodland on the north side.
Okay, sir, I'm going to ask you to wrap.
Okay, I'm finished.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Sandy Lieberman, and I live on 29277 Shaker Boulevard, and I'm so happy that you're really considering the sidewalks. I think it's so important. In the pandemic, my husband and I started walking almost every day, and I love walking in Pepper Pike, but on Shaker Boulevard, it is just so dangerous. So many times, I walk facing traffic, but people are on their cell phones or they're with landscaping trucks and they're going around. and on Shaker Boulevard is a bike street, and yet we have no bike lanes. And so, and there's a sign that says it's a bike street. So I don't know if are bicycles allowed on the sidewalks? Will they be, or on the walkways?
That's a good question, Sandy. There are, at this point, there are no regulations for the sidewalks that don't exist. It's anticipated that certainly young cyclists are going to be riding their small bikes on these sidewalks. Maybe older people who aren't as comfortable, like riding down Lander Road in a lane. As I mentioned on Saturday, it is not anticipated that your dedicated cyclist in his spandex shorts, who's going as fast as an automobile basically, are going to be riding on these sidewalks. And I think we would regulate against that, would be my anticipation.
Mayor, if I may
So I
add,
hope that answers the question.
Mayor, if I may add, you made a comment that people were walking facing the traffic. In fact, that's precisely what we are supposed to do by city ordinance.
Right.
We should, and I see so many times people walking with the traffic, which I believe is dangerous, and spread the word, walk against the traffic.
Right. And I think that Pepper Pike is a city where we welcome children, and I want children to be here, and my children are older, but my grandchildren come over, and I want to be able to take them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Ann Lutchen. We have been residents of Pepper Pike for about 28 years, 29826 South Woodland Road. We knew when we moved in there were no sidewalks. We weren't looking for sidewalks, we weren't looking for a neighborhood, we were looking for a house that we could enjoy and the atmosphere around it. We will own this house probably for about another month, but I do feel very strongly that the last thing we need on South Woodland are sidewalks. Our mailbox has been taken down like at least 3 times since we've been there because the street curves, you come up sort of over a hill, they're going at a good clip, and down goes the mailbox. There was talk with Mayor Akers, I don't know how many years ago, about putting in, it wasn't going to be exactly a gravel path, but it was going to start by Lander on South Woodland and I think down to Kersdale. Well, who was going to use that? Would you let your little kid ride on that? Our grandkids have been perfectly happy playing in the yard, in the large backyards. They've done bocce, they've done croquet, they've done running, they've done soccer, they've done whatever. And I don't think you want to change the rural atmosphere of Pepper Pike. We're close to hospitals, we're close to shopping, and we're close to houses of worship. It's just been wonderful. And I would hate to see it change, which I think it definitely would. And it's interesting because—
Mary Ann, you're going to have to wrap it up.
Okay, our realtor has never mentioned walkability as an obstacle to selling our house. In fact, she said they're selling very well. So
thank you, Mary Ann.
Be interesting to see a hand.
Hello, my name is Harry Yeremian, and I live on Shaker Boulevard. I've been here now about 5 years, and I have to say the reason I moved to Pepper Pike, I moved from Los Angeles, California, because of the peacefulness out here, because of the green out here, and because of the lush of the nature out here. If I wanted a big city, I would move to another big city, but I moved here because of how quiet and how beautiful it is, how the school district is. In adding a sidewalk on Shaker, I don't think it's a good idea. Number one, that street is very, very dark, very dark. My window faces Shaker Boulevard, and because of the construction of the sewer, I can hear cars going by left and right. The metal on the floor is shaking because they're driving so fast up and down that street. Now you add a sidewalk to that mix, it's not gonna be a good mixture. Second of all, you want a place to walk. There's a beautiful park down the road, right by the Pepper Pike Park. I take my kids there all the time. They love it. The Orange Park is another great park for kids to go and enjoy. So I gotta say, people keep throwing out there that young people are coming here and they want sidewalks. I just moved here and I don't want sidewalks. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sharon Roth, and I have lived here in Pepper Pike for 35 years and enjoyed raising my family here of 4 kids. My 2 adult sons who came back to Cleveland wanted to live close to us. They did not even consider coming to Pepper Pike because there was no sidewalks. They went to Orange. They were really excited that they could jump on their sidewalks. They could ride all the way to Pinecrest. They could go to each other's house. One is in Orange Hill, one is in Orange Tree. Their whole city is connected. And to be honest, we're not looking for a sidewalk on every single street in Pepper Pike. We're just trying to connect the city. I think what you have to remember is we're living in a different time with distracted drivers. And people are texting or they're looking at their dashboards and electronics are consuming them. I drive down Lander Road from Heinitz many times, and I'm sure you've had it too. I have cars coming at me until they correct themselves, and I'm trying to defensively drive because I'm sure they were texting and they started to cross the line until they caught themselves. I really would like to see the city change and, you know, start with Lander Road and then go to the next one. But I think there's a lot in favor, and it's for our whole city. I'm not looking at one lot or anything. It's the whole of the city that I think this would help. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Scott Clement. I live on Edgedale Road. I'm also the manager of the first planned development in Ohio. We have 1,500 homes, and we've looked at this question ourselves about putting in sidewalks or not. And one of the concerns someone mentioned was about plowing. You said you're not going to do it. However, we looked at the idea of widening the roads instead, having the bike lane, walking lane, combination lane. Then when the roads are salted, the trail is also salted. And it's, the maintenance cost and its year-round usability. Switching gears a little bit, I don't understand why we put a multi-purpose trail on Gates Mills when it's got 2 lanes, so there's plenty of rooms for bikes to not be on the trail. Why would you want a multi-purpose trail on Gates Mills? That seems like it should be a walking, hiking trail. As far as the other concern, though, people are saying about traffic, distracted driving. I guess that's an argument to say put it off to the side. But again, I think I want my kid to be able to ride down to Heinen's and pick up groceries, having something wide enough that he can ride on. So banning bicycles on the, think about making it something that bicycles can go on too, because they're as unprotected as the walkers. So I'm not pushing any one direction, but I want to put some thoughts out there. One about maintainability. If it's these are supposed to be bike roads. Someone mentioned Shaker is supposed to be a bike road, or is it Lander? For connecting to other communities, maybe the money would be better spent making the roads wider and putting 10 feet on each side of the road for the bicycles and for the walkers and everybody to walk along. Just throwing some of those ideas out there.
Hi, I'm Howard Neerman. I live on Pine Brook. But if we just work the road. I'm Howard Neerman. I live on Pine Brook Lane. Been there for 26 years. I have a couple of comments about safety. I run about 25 to 30 miles a week. I've run 15 marathons and trained 90% of those miles are in Pepper Pike. I've had 3 injuries in that 15 years, all on sidewalks. I will not go and run anywhere near a sidewalk, tripping on sidewalks and falling. You run it, as we've said before, you run facing traffic. You can see people coming, and if they look like they're going to be distracted, you get out of the way. Simple. I've been doing this for a long time. Number 2 is usability. I understand we all know that we're in northern Ohio, and it does snow here. And if we're going to be spending a lot of money to put in pathways for people to walk and all that, we should keep them clean. And if we can't keep them clean and we can't afford to keep them clean, then we better be prepared for the liability that that may cause, because if you get snow and ice, people slip and fall.
My name is Dr. Stanley Fox, and I live on Gates Mills Boulevard. And some years ago, I put some kind of resolution in to have some kind of walking paths on the heavily trafficked streets. I would drive along and I would see like cleaning people and domestic workers trying to walk to the house that they have to serve at, and they're right in the street. They're walking in the street. And on some of the streets, like I think it's, is it Lander, that has a lot of high dips in the road around Shaker Boulevard. You come over that hump, you're liable to kill somebody. So I was afraid to say sidewalks. I said walking paths, some kind of running path, but now you're talking sidewalks. Now, is it my understanding that you're only going to do it on one side of the street? Well, how about instead of 5 feet on one side of the street, make it 3 feet on both sides of the street? What good does it do if people have to cross the street to get on the sidewalk? It could be dangerous. So I'd be for 3 feet on each side of the street.
Stephen Page, live on Shaker Boulevard, and we moved to Pepper Pike with one very young child, and we would have loved to have been able to take our kid out on a stroller, on a nice walk, on a nice evening right out of the house. And then we had another child, which we could have done with them. So I think Pepper Pike is a place for children, to raise children. And I think sidewalks is going to make it a whole lot better and get a chance to walk down the street and meet your neighbor, which a lot of times being on Shaker Boulevard we felt was kind of isolating. So I just want to get up and voice my support for the whole thing.
My name is Jennifer Baumann. I live on both Shaker Boulevard and Lander, and I would like to thank you for this presentation, and I am very hopeful that everyone who is willing will vote for sidewalks. I love the idea of more walkability. I've always lived with sidewalks until I moved here a few years ago. And sometimes we put the dog in the car and we drive back to Shaker Heights because it's so nice to walk on a sidewalk. And I think it's nice for children to play on sidewalks, and I think it's much safer to be on the sidewalk than on the side of the road. So I've got my fingers crossed that we will have sidewalks. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Patty Golish. I live on Shaker Boulevard, and I just have a couple of questions. A little closer? Okay. Is the cost of this going to be $3,740,000? For all of the sidewalks, is it going to be $3 million proposed? Okay, and that's going to be over time. Who's going to pay for that? Do we have a loan? The city pays for it, or do our taxes pay for it?
Ultimately, all revenue that the city has comes from taxes, but this is coming from cash reserves that the city has. We do all of our projects the best we can through the monies that we've saved.
Okay. Well, I guess I have a problem with if we have $15 million in the cash reserve or whatever was previously mentioned, why would we take $4 million of those dollars for sidewalks on main streets? I'm on Shaker Boulevard, If your setbacks are what you have said they were going to be, I'm going to have people walking through my living room. What? I am only set back from, I live in a 150-year-old house. It's very close to the street. So if you go ahead and put a sidewalk down there, you will be probably within 20 feet of my front door. That's true. That's true. It's true. It's 28099 Shaker Boulevard. I'm directly across the street from the City Hall. But it's one of the oldest houses in Pepper Pike, and I really think you need to. I worry about children on streets. I've had 4 kids. I've raised all 4 of them here. I've had an advantage because I live next door to the Friendship Circle, so the kids could go over there and ride their bikes. But I know that with City Hall, the park that's there, even going to the trails, when I walk, I go to the trails in Beechwood. So I just want you to think of, more than anything else, the money, anything, think of the safety of the children. We've heard so many people talk about, oh, well, people are distracted. Oh, okay, let's say they are. They shouldn't be, but they are. So instead of them running up over a curb, let them kill one of our kids. It doesn't make sense on these busy streets. And if you want to walk, take a walk down, where the hell do you live? Pepper Creek. Take a walk down Pepper Creek. It's a beautiful area. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Mark Freemuth. I live on South Woodland near Kersdale, and I've been there about 20 years. I lived in Shaker for decades before that. I want to thank you for making it possible to at least bring this issue forward. I've been missing sidewalks essentially since I moved to Pepper. To me, it's a safety issue. I live right on South Woodland. I go down South Woodland, up and down South Woodland frequently. There are walkers, joggers, bikers, mothers with kids, people walking dogs. It's a safety issue. I had an incident maybe 10 years ago. I usually go out pretty early in the morning. It was dark, it was snowing, it was very snowing. A woman was coming down her driveway on South Woodland. No sidewalk, no lights, which is another big issue, and the woman fell in the street. And by the grace of God, I managed to stop in time not to kill her. I called Bruce Akers at the time and said, we need to civilize this community and make it safer. And he said, well, we have this, rural, environment here, and people don't want to change it. But it's not safe. And we need the sidewalks. It's also, as somebody else already said, I find it quite isolating. I hardly get to know any of my neighbors, which was not the case in Shaker Heights because people were out walking the sidewalks, regardless of whether they had kids or not. And the other, my last point is I agree with the gentleman who's talked about keeping the sidewalks clear in the winter. I think it is very short-sighted, frankly, not to think about keeping, this is Northeast Ohio. It's going to be snow and ice 5 months of the year, and it's not going to be safe. And the point is to have walkability. You're going to have walkability only for 7 months of the year?
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Manny Naft. I'm a resident of Pepper Pike for 37 years. I've been attending just about every council meeting since 2019, and just want to share with you some of the knowledge that I've gained over those years by going to the council meetings and reading the minutes and looking at the proposals that have been put together. The question has been asked many times, okay, where do we start? And the answer to that is there were people that came to planning and zoning meetings, road and infrastructure meetings, and asked for sidewalks. And with that, that really wasn't making any traction until there was a $500,000 grant that was available to the city to put a pathway down Gates Mills Boulevard. And what was sold in that package to us was that this pathway down Gates Mills Boulevard for $1.2 million was going to address the safety issues, and that's where the sidewalks were going to start. And with that, that's how it started, that's where it's gone. There was going to be no other further conversation. When the question was asked, where did this $500,000 grant and this path down Gates Mills Boulevard come from, it basically was parachuted in, and there was no consideration for anything past that. Okay, these other conversations have now grown since then, but the main point is we've got a project of where we're starting, and I'm not sure, Don, if you can show your graph, back up there about the walkability in the city. Okay, well, Don showed you a graph, and Don has done a great job for the city. He's done an excellent job in regards to showing you where the walkability is, and he showed you this map over here. And this map shows that if you put sidewalks in, that you're going to service 1,729 residents with that walkability, with those sidewalks. The one comment is that you go back and you look at the first graph, and the first graph is Gates Mills Boulevard. In Gates Mills Boulevard project, which is a done deal, it's going to happen. It's going to happen by the end of next year, which has been told to us on here.
Asking you to wrap up, Manny.
If you want to know the facts, you'll ask that I could be extended to give you the information that you're really looking for.
Good evening. My name is Paul Melvey. I live on 31749 Gates Mills Boulevard, what's referred to as the upper end of Gates Mills Boulevard. I'm curious, when is the first phase going to happen on Gates Mills Boulevard for the trail? I haven't heard when it's going to start, actually, this construction.
2024.
Fantastic. And I'm hoping that very soon after, maybe we've even applied already for the grant, that maybe we can extend that up to to my end of Gates Mills Boulevard. I would appreciate that very much. I love the presentation. It laid it out so well. I think the thought I had all along was, when can we start? Let's get going on this thing. And it's about time that Gates Mills Boulevard gets its trail and the rest of the city gets going and gets the sidewalks done. I've heard it talked about for how many years, and everybody wants it for the most part. I'll say the majority want it, but we never do it. We keep talking. I say let's do it.
Laurel, oops. Laurel Kest, South Woodland Road. I was here Saturday morning, and I recall a mention of the fact that the sidewalks might have some toning in terms of color that would make them less glaring than the orange village. I like the meanders in orange, but it is a very white sidewalk. That's not, I'll pick it up later. That's not what this says. This speaks of the fact that the toning would cost more and that it would have a white surface, which is a protective surface that is sprayed on the concrete, et cetera, and so forth. Is it going to look white, or is it going to have a more natural toning, as it now is being proposed and priced out?
That was one of the comments, and I think one of the councilmen made that comment on Saturday. You're correct.
What's the answer?
I think that I was the person that said that, and I don't believe that that we are that the white sidewalks is what we want to have. If the sidewalks do pass, we want to have them to be a darker color, a gray color, so that they will resemble sandstone and older sidewalks. They won't be sandstone, but they will resemble them, and they will look. They will help to preserve the rural nature of our city. It won't be perfect, but it's something that will, if the electorate votes to have sidewalks, it's our plan to have them as landscaped and as natural looking as possible. That's my plan. I shouldn't speak for the whole council.
Has that been part of the pricing, the estimations and stuff?
The estimate was based on what we would consider the normal sidewalk installation. We would look at alternates and look at, when we go to the bidding process, we can include different alternates for if we wanted to get it either colorized or with a different type of finish.
Oh, thanks.
Hi, good evening. Eric Schmidt, 29449 Bolingbrook. I've been in Pepper Pike for nearly 20 years, and when I first came, I immediately had kids. It was such a wonderful place, I thought, until I started to push my kids around in the stroller on Bolingbrook and feared for our lives, and literally went out and bought a radar gun because I had to convince myself, are they really driving that fast? And they were. So I want to say that I am not only eager to see sidewalks on what you're calling the busy streets, but I would welcome to see them someday on Bolingbrook.
Thank you. We are going to wrap up with this next comment, I believe.
Thank you very much, Council. At 21 years old, I don't see anyone in my generation here, so consider me the voice of your children.
I'm sorry, can we have just your name and the street you live on, please?
Benny Littlejohn, pronouns they, them, and I live on Pine Tree Road off of South Woodland. Yeah, that crazy intersection. What I do want to say is that should this plan pass, you should design it with within the high school kids in mind, because I know that when I was in high school, not only would it have been an easy walk to school, since it would be like less than a mile away, so that way I can get physical exercise and stuff, because of course the high school kids they don't get recess very often, so they could really use their legs moving. Let's talk about the mental health benefits, though. Sidewalks symbolize connection, and because of the way Pepper Pike is organized with the acre lot minimum, it can feel very isolating for kids, because I know that the way that our city was designed, I didn't feel encouraged to explore our city. It's very, which is to say, it's very beautiful. The lack of safety is also concerning too, because usually around this time of year or in the spring, you got those track kids running and you got the cross country kids running, and I'd hate to see one of them get splattered on the road. And in addition, another mental health benefit, of course, would just be it's inviting to our youth to go out, explore the city, because it's beautiful. I am tripping over my words. I should shut up now.
Thank you very much.
There.
Well, thank you everybody for coming out this evening and offering your observations, your comments, your questions. I know I appreciate it. I'm certain the City Council appreciates it. That's why we're going through this process. You can tell your friends and neighbors who have not attended one if their questions are not answered for them by the materials that the city has been distributing through various means, that they should feel free to come to our next meeting on September 26th. Same time, same place. And everyone have a safe evening, travel safely home, and good night.